And if our speakers would like to mute themselves now, that would be great. Welcome to our participants who are trickling in.
Any introduction?
Yes, I'll be introducing.
Okay.
Perfect. Okay. I can go ahead and get started then, and we'll see if more people show up along the way. So if I could get my esteemed panelists to mute themselves, please, just so we don't have any audio feedback, that'd be amazing. Thank you so much. To our attendees, hello and welcome to this week's congressional briefing on the impact of religious persecution on women in India. Yesterday was International Women's Day, as I'm sure you all know, and it was a day meant to celebrate the cultural, political, and socioeconomic achievements of women. Yesterday, people posted artwork and raised slogans and posted articles about the need to not only rejoice in women's achievements, but also to raise awareness about the ongoing struggles faced by women of all backgrounds all over the world. But yesterday, despite this global celebration, Indian Muslim women went about their days in a nation that is rife with hatred towards a minority of 200 million, with little more than a whisper of recognition from beyond the world, from the world beyond India. This is despite the fact that Indian Muslims are currently living in a nation that is nearing the advanced stages of preparation for genocide. India's treatment of Muslim women made headlines only recently following an unconstitutional ban on students wearing the hijab in schools in the South Indian state of Karnataka. Muslim students who wear the hijab have been kicked out of their classrooms, verbally abused by their teachers and fellow students, and harassed by members of Prime Minister Narendra Modi's Bharatiya Janata Party, including through calls for arrest and doxing of minors. But as far as harassment goes, this is only the tip of the iceberg. Online, through platforms like Twitter, Clubhouse, and Reddit, the harassment Muslim women face from Hindu extremists is as graphic as it is frightening. I won't repeat the degrading comments that are made about Muslim women's bodies, but I will say that these platforms are rife with fantasies of rape and other ways to humiliate Muslim women. Reddit threads with thousands of users fantasize about replacing India's storefront mannequins with Muslim women's bodies. eBay-style apps are created to auction vocal Muslim women as servants and prostitutes. And what's even more concerning is that it's not only men who are engaging in this kind of hatred. There are plenty of women also who have been radicalized by India's Hindu extremist movement who contribute to the narrative that Muslim women are objects that are to be defiled and conquered. The mastermind behind Bully Buy, for example, one of the auction apps that I just mentioned, was an 18-year-old Hindu woman. And Clubhouse rooms featured female speakers who bash on Muslims, painting them all to be a threat to Hindus. And yet in India, I'll see a lot of people, I think this is pretty common for people to say, well, no, this is just talk. This is just online stuff. It's not anything impactful. But in India, which has for years struggled with an epidemic of violence against Muslims, and additionally, violence against women in general, things like auction apps and lewd fantasies are far from a joke. These are active threats that Muslim women face from India's general public on a day-to-day basis as the calls for genocide grow less subtle by the day. And today, we've got an incredible panel of amazing women who will be speaking in more detail on this subject. But before we hear from them, we'd like to play a brief video showing the latest week's news updates from India. So if we could play that video, please.
A mob of Hindu extremists led by BJP leaders demanded entry into a Muslim prayer space in Karnataka state so they could perform a Hindu prayer inside. Despite an order banning all religious groups from entering, the police protected the extremists and arrested over 100 Muslims who tried to defend the space. Research conducted by The Wire, an Indian news publication, found that Uttar Pradesh Chief Minister Yogi Adityanath has made over 100 anti-minority hate speeches in the past 3 months alone. The Hindu supremacist leader has repeatedly referred to Muslims as terrorists and rioters. At a memorial for Harsha, a Hindu extremist man who was killed in Karnataka, Hindu extremists forced the man's sister Ashwini to take an anti-Muslim oath against her will. Hindu supremacists are accusing Muslims of killing Harsha, though there is no proof backing this claim. The High Court of Kerala State upheld a government ban on Muslim-owned news channel Media One TV despite the protests of parliamentarians and journalists. Managing editor C. Dawood says the ban was ordered against Media One for its critical coverage of the Modi regime. Muslim students in Karnataka who wore the hijab to take their exams were harassed by a group of Hindu extremist students at their college. The extremists demanded that the Muslim women leave the campus despite having permission from the principal to wear their hijabs. BJP leader Harish Punja, who protested alongside Hindu extremists against the death of Harsha in Karnataka, declared that the saffron flag, a Hindu supremacist symbol, would be unfurled beneath the national flag at the Red Fort in Delhi in a clear attempt to intimidate Muslims. Fahad Shah, a Kashmiri Muslim journalist who was arrested for alleged sedition in February, was arrested yet again on false charges just hours after being granted bail. His arrests have led to widespread global outcry, including from United Nations experts. Muslim student Rashid Rizwan, who was one of many Indian nationals stranded in Ukraine following Russia's declaration of war, received hate messages from Hindu extremists due to his tweets criticizing Prime Minister Narendra Modi. He has received messages saying he is a traitor and deserves to die.
So those were the latest news updates from India, which provides context for the subject matter at hand. Just to remind our participants that none of this is happening in isolation. So I'm going to jump into our panelists right now because we do have a star cast today. And we'll be starting out with someone who did record a video for us because she couldn't be here today. But you've all heard her name. Linda Sarsour is an award-winning racial justice and civil rights activist who is especially known for her work in combating Islamophobia in the United States. She's the co-founder of the first Muslim online organizing platform, Empower Change, as well as the co-chair of the 2017 Women's March, the 2017 Day Without a Woman, and the 2019 Women's March. So we'll be hearing her remarks right now.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Linda Sarsour, and I'm the co-founder of the Women's March on Washington. Till today, the largest single-day protest in American history. I'm also the co-founder of Empower Change and Until Freedom, a racial and social justice organization here in the United States. Many people know me as a civil rights activist, a human rights activist, and of course, as you can see, a Muslim American activist. I'm very honored and privileged to be here on this panel at this congressional briefing with these incredible women who have put their lives on the line to defend human rights, to defend other women. I remember hearing a quote one time that really moved me, and it said, "There's a special place in hell for women who do not support other women." So as we celebrate Women's History Month, as we celebrate many opportunities and events this week for International Women's Day, let us remember women around the world who are victims of sexual violence, of abuse, of discrimination at the hands of governments, of murder and other state violence. Today, specifically, I talk about my Muslim sisters and other minority sisters like Dalit sisters in India. We are watching fascism and the Modi government, who really, for me, there's no question about it in my mind that Modi himself is a fascist and is allowing for policies across India to target minority groups. Now, listen, Muslims are not a small group in India, but what we are seeing is the targeting of Muslims across the country. And most recently, watching videos of young Muslim women who are just trying to get an education. I'm watching women literally fight off others, literally ripping their hijabs off or telling them in order to set foot into the school, you need to take your hijab off. I'm actually watching women being victims of violence for choosing to be Muslims, for being able to practice their religion freely in a country like India. And it is important for us as Americans, and especially as American legislators and people that have power and privilege and influence, to be the voices of those around the world. We cannot allow our government to continue to align with a government like Modi's. Just as we criticize Donald Trump and his policies that he was putting forth here, we have to be consistent in the way that we criticize authoritarian regimes across the world. And Modi has no interest in uniting Indians, in bringing people together. In fact, his policies are divisive and, more importantly, extremely dangerous, especially to women in India. We have to be consistent across the board. As a Muslim American woman, as a woman who wears hijab proudly, as a woman who has chosen to wear hijab, we need American legislators to stand up and say that women should be allowed to choose what they wear anywhere around the world. We should not allow for this type of discrimination and this violence and state violence against women who decide to wear hijab, women who engage in political dissent and protesting human rights violations in their countries, including in a place like India. It's the same experiences that we see Muslim women having in places like France. Muslim women in France are not able to wear hijab and go to public universities or have public sector jobs, and that's unacceptable. Muslim women in places like France can't even go to the beach and wear modest long sleeve bathing suits. It's not okay. It's not okay in France, and it surely is not okay in India. But we're also consistent, and the women here are consistent. We also will criticize governments like Iran who force women to wear hijab. The point that we are making here is that women have the agency and should have the right to choose who they want to be, what they want to say, what they want to wear, what religion they want to follow, or maybe no religion at all. It is important for us as Americans to be very clear, to have a moral compass that always points towards elevating and defending women's rights around the world. And in order for us to maintain credibility, we need more people to speak up against the Modi government to ensure that minorities in India are protected, that we speak it clearly to the government of India and let him know and let those in power know that we, the American people, we, the American government, are clear where we stand. We stand with minority women in India. We stand with Muslim women and their right to wear hijab anywhere in India, in school, to have public jobs, to be able to access anything in their society, regardless of what cloth they choose to wear on their head. And I stand in solidarity with Dalit sisters who have been on the front lines fighting for human rights in India, on the internet, and watching the ways in which they have received an extremely dangerous online abuse by those who are in support of the Modi government. And I'm very appreciative to Hindus for Human Rights who have been in unequivocal solidarity with their Muslim sisters and brothers. And I'm very grateful to the advocacy and to the power and influence of the Indian American Council for their work and their education and their building of relationships, and was grateful to spend a weekend with them in Selma in commemoration of Bloody Sunday. So I'm just here to offer my solidarity. I am here to say that I unequivocally stand with women in India, in particular, of course, just because of who I am, with my Muslim sisters. I hope that you know that we, your American Muslim sisters, are standing unequivocally in solidarity with you. You do not deserve what is happening to you, and you deserve to be free and deserve to wear your hijab proudly and become educated and thrive, not just in India and your society, but all over the world. So thank you so much for having me here today. I am grateful to be here, and you can count on me to be here with you, to fight with you, to stand with you, to speak for you and with you, and to be in full solidarity.
Linda Sarsour, everyone. We want to give a special shout out to her. Thank you so much for taking the time, Sister Linda, for recording those remarks for us. They're always powerful. Moving on to our live speakers now, we're going to be starting off with Bindu Amini, who is an Indian lawyer, lecturer, and Dalit activist. She is one of the first 2 women between the ages of 10 and 50 to enter the Sabrimala temple after a Supreme Court of India decision that allowed women of reproductive age to enter the temple. She is a Kerala state leader for the PIM Army, a Dalit rights organization, and she ascribes to subaltern feminism, which has a focus on the rights of women in oppressed classes. So clearly an all-around superstar. Bindu, we are so excited to have you here with us.
Thanks for inviting me. And already introduced me. So I'm not to try to introduce again. And but I just disclose and informed to you. I'm also a illiterate. I'm a daughter of illiterate Dalit parents, and I'm also the first generation educated person from my family. And because of that, we also face so many issues. And in my childhood, also I faced so many caste-related issues. And I also saw everywhere the persons from my community are attacked. And nowadays, I realized that that is not only in any village, that is everywhere in India, especially UP and other states, surrounding states like Uttarakhand. That such cases are not a huge number, but in UP and Delhi and so many Bihar and so many states, this type of issues are day to day. It's increasing, and I think. You all are knows the real situation of Dalit, Adivasi, and other marginalized women in India facing so many issues. They are facing two types of discriminations. One is based on their gender, and another is based on their religion or their caste. And we all are suffering from economic issues and some other social issues and sexual atrocities and also caste-based atrocities. And we in everywhere, in education, in our profession, in everywhere, this type of discriminations we all are facing. And another thing is that also introduced that I am one of the first women to enter Shabarimala. And I think because of that, I am here. And after 2nd January 2019, I face many issues. And I'm also targeted by Sangha Parivar group. So many groups, RSS, BJP, and Karma Samadhi, and so many Sangha Parivar groups. Okay, and they are always trying to attack me and some other ladies like Rehna Fatima and Bindu Kalyani and Libby Sears. So many women were attacked by these groups and physically and in cyberspace. I think I am the first woman to attack here. Not in first in case of a number. Okay, the first to the cyber attacks facing by these groups, and they are also created morphed videos, spawn videos, and they in cyberspace, in Facebook and WhatsApp, in all cyberspace, they are spreading this by this is not by a person, single person. This is it's an organized crime. Most of the atrocities of against this marginalized sections are always done by organized groups. That is also show we that's proved in Billy by cases. In that case also we all seen so that it's a targeted groups, and they are always spreading hate politics, and they are always trying to this attack against minority groups, especially women's. And in this case also online mock auction, and this is done by some groups of Hindutva, and we know that actually the meaning of the word Hindu is way of life. But nowadays we know that they are trying in India, BJP and other RSS and other groups all are trying to become a Hindu Rashtra. They all are trying to spoil our constitution, destroy our constitution, our constitutional moralities. The Indian constitution provides so many rights, equality, and also protective discrimination and religious rights. But nowadays we all in everywhere, in schools, colleges, in our profession, in our courts, in every workspace, and including domestic space. They are trying to interfere our old rights, like actually we know that the food habits of in India is a multi-ethnic, multicultural, multi-linguistic country, but Hindutva organizations and also state is also trying to interfere our food habits and our old rights, including our dressing and our right to food, and in everywhere they are trying to interfere and curtail our constitutional rights and our customary rights. And they all are trying to destroy the Dalits and the Adivasis and the Muslim, especially women's rights. And they are trying to become a Hindu Rashtra, and they are also trying to introduce Hindu code. But I think in India, uniform civil code is a good one. But at the same time, we know that this is a multi-ethnic, multicultural, multilinguistic nation. So it is not easy. But at the same time, they are trying. They are not trying to become a uniform civil code, but they are trying to become a Hindu civil code. And so we all are against that. We thought India is a socialist country and democratic country, but in India they are nowadays in the occasion of 100 years of RSS anniversary, they are trying to India become a Hindu Rashtra, and so they are destroy all democratic principles practiced in India. And we the people, women, Dalits and Adivasis, we are never allow them to create India become a Hindu Rashtra. We are trying to protect our rights. We are trying to protect our constitution. And yesterday is International Women's Day. We are here in Kerala, here at Wayanad district. We inaugurate a She Point. That's a space for women. And so we develop it, become a good library for these women, and also that space, this space exclusively for women. And we all trying to unite, and we all trying to work together. And in the occasion of this International Women's Day, my message is we all work together and we all provide better supporting system. Without better supporting system, we can do nothing. Okay, so this is my message and my request to international community. We provide better supporting system to all marginalized sections, especially Adivasi, Dalit women, and also all other minority sections. And this occasion, I appreciate you wearing of this hijab, and this is also I think amazing. Okay, basically, I'm not a Muslim, but nowadays this is also, we provide a supporting. It's also a supporting system, and we all recognize, and we all are trying to fight against this Hindutva state, and we all trying to fight against all Hindutva groups. And so this is a good initiative, and I appreciate you all. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bindu. We appreciate you and appreciate your support and all your wonderful comments. Thank you so much. For our next panelist, we have Akriti Bhatia. She's a researcher, journalist, and an activist. She has been the founding partner of Jaan Ki Baat, an on-ground public opinion media platform. She hosts a show called Shram Aur Hum on workers' unity and independent workers media platform. And she is on the advisory board of Hindus for Human Rights. So Akriti, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. Am I audible?
Yes, loud and clear.
Great. So I just want to begin by saying that social progress can be measured by the social position of women and marginalized sections in a society, as has been said by Karl Marx. And Lenin had famously remarked that success of a revolution depends upon the extent to which women take part in it. So I first of all would like to wish a very happy International Women's Day to everyone present here and listening to us. I'm Akriti Bhatia, the founder of PEGAM, a media advocacy network of scholars, activists, and practitioners, and advisory board member of Hindus for Human Rights, as Safa just introduced. I'm teaching sociology at Miranda House, Delhi University, and I consider myself to be a media activist. If we talk about India, it has been 75 years since independence that women got the right to vote. But till date, they are considered as machines producing votes and reproducing babies who would turn into productive labor force tomorrow. But ironically, we see one of the lowest participation of women in the labor force today in our country. So till date, women are considered as second-class citizens, and we have one of the highest incidents of crimes against women, and unfortunately, the lowest conviction rates in these cases. But this particular regime has been worse, and this is what I would like to focus on today. We have witnessed brutal cases against women in Hathras, Unnao, Kathua, and many others, where we saw political office bearers being complicit in such crimes. And that is really the worrisome part. Another very specific thing about this regime, which is the BJP RSS government regime, is that they are fundamentally Brahminical and patriarchal, that they fundamentally practice Brahminical patriarchy. They hate dissent, but they hate dissenting women even more. And they're scared of diversity, they're scared of diverse opinions. We have seen unprecedented attacks and crackdowns on women intellectuals, journalists, and young activists. We have witnessed the cold-blooded murder of Gauri Lankesh, as everybody is aware. We've seen endless state repression and online sexualized abuse and hate campaigns against the likes of Rana Ayub, Sheila Rashid, Disha Ravi, who was active in the farmers' protest, Devangana, Kalita, Nodeep Kaur, the Dalit activist, Safur Zargar, Natasha Narwal, Jyoti Jagdap of the Kabir Kala Manch, then anti-caste activist Meena Kandaswamy and Kiruba Manusamy, and the list goes on and on. Even personally, I've had many anecdotes of online abuse whenever I have spoken on television or have written something or even tweeted for very pro-women or very pro-constitution remarks, which if I start going on, this space and time would definitely be insufficient. So we know the stance of this regime on minorities, especially minority women, and as the opening statements and even the video that has shown the hijab controversy, the online weaponized spaces for Muslim women, it is absolutely something which is out in the open. But what about Hindus that this government claimed to be the protectors and voices of? What is their stance on Hindu women? It is no less shameful, indeed, I would say. I often wonder how come Sita, who's Lord Ram's wife, is not standing beside their version of Ram. And how the Beti and Mata in their Beti Bachao and the Bharat Mata rhetorics are so scared and alienated today. Even the main advocates of these ideologies and policies has abandoned his own wife. So if you talk about laws like the love jihad law, which completely criminalizes Hindu-Muslim marriages, interfaith marriages, especially when the man is a Muslim, they essentially believe that Hindu women have no agency of even choosing their life partners, and that they have no agency over their own bodies when Hindutva leaders are actually heard on open platforms urging them to give birth to tens and tens of babies to outdo the Muslim population in India. I wonder how come there has been not a single woman RSS leader, and how come the ruling party representatives have maximum cases of crimes against women. So I think there's enough evidence to say that why this particular regime is particularly harmful and dangerous for women, be it of any faiths. But now I would like to think of what could be the answers to this question. And I personally feel that feminism is one of the strongest answers to Hindutva. We need to revisit both the ideas of Hinduism and feminism and how both have been understood in fairly rigid and fundamental ways and have divorced from the idea of faith in a very big way. So we have this idea of divine feminism that I find very interesting, that is fundamentally against homogeneity and against the monomania, the monoism, the monotheism that many of these religious leaders and regimes are actually propagating. Also, the idea of Hinduism, which has been especially the right-wing Hindutva that I'm talking about, which is seen in a very authoritarian, ethnocentric, gendered and Brahminical versions that they deploy and call it in the name of Hinduism, that needs to be openly rejected and rectified is what I fundamentally believe. Because there are so many goddesses within Hinduism, and interestingly, not one subsumes the other. There are so many symbols that we can actually take so much positivity from. For example, the Shakti principle of creative energy, which is seen as the woman form of God, and the principle of divine feminism gives us beautiful and pluralistic language against homogeneity and hate. This idea of Ardhanarishwar, which is a symbol of God as half man and half woman, is so interesting, which centrally respects gender diversity at its very heart. And even the Bhakti movement is replete with such examples. Then we often say that feminism is a European idea, but we have so much to look back upon, and there are such icons, ancient icons of the 6th and the 8th century BC, like Gargi and Maitri, who challenged learned men for academic debates, and there's so much that we can learn from. We also get our answers centrally from Ambedkar, who is one of the major person who has formulated our defining document, which is the Indian Constitution, who firmly rejected caste and religious endogamy, because it's only through marrying within caste and within religion that kind of propagates these very hierarchical structures. We need, therefore, a sustained feminist interpretation of our religious texts, beliefs, practices, and traditions, which are that are more foundational to even the Hindu tradition than the Vedic Brahmanism, if we really have to challenge these Hindutva forces that are spreading so much hate and are leading to so much religious persecution in our country. So I would like to stop here. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Akriti. Those were amazing remarks. And I really appreciate your multi-layered look at everything like feminism and this movement against Hindutva as a whole. So thank you so much for those enlightening comments. Our next speaker is there's many titles here. So Reverend Dr. Evangeline Anderson Rajkumar is a pastor in the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America, serving in the India-Kentucky Synod as a Dalit womanist and theologian. Reverend Evangeline addresses the issues of caste, race, gender, and patriarchy at the intersection of religion, spirituality, and theology of justice. She has taught feminist and Dalit liberation theology for over 2 decades in seminaries in both India and in the US. So a very accomplished person, another superstar. Reverend Evangeline, we're so excited to have you here.
Thank you, Safa. First of all, marking the International Women's Day 2022, let me bring greetings to all the women of the world. And a special shout out to those women who have faced the brunt of patriarchy, violence, brutal violence, and are reminded of that and probably given up any hope of justice. I want to give a shout out to all those women to say, you are not forgotten. and that your struggles, your pain is remembered and lifted up, and we will use that to once again affirm our pledge, renew our pledge to stand for justice and work together for justice. Thank you very much. I would like to choose my visit to Kandhamal in Orissa, just a few months after the, I won't call it genocide, but violence targeting the Christian community in the state of Orissa in Kandhamal. I think the moment we talk about the state of Orissa, what comes to our minds is the burning of Graham Staines with his two sons who were there in the car. And because of this hatred of the religion, the faith, where Graham Staines and his wife Gladys Staines, they were working with the leprosy affected in India. And to find that, to name those acts of compassion as ways of attempting to convert people, change the pattern of is not innocent one. So I would like to portray through the lens of the experience of Sister Meena, who was gang raped during that Kandhamal violence, as the lens for us to look at how Christians, especially the women, the Dalits and the tribals, their bodies are targeted as the site of violence, and how the bodies turn into battlefields where the Hindutva, the ideology of Hindutva reinforces, wants to control and have abusive, absolute control over the body of a Dalit, a woman, a Christian. And one other point to start with is, we find that this whole religion and faith of Christianity gets so feminized, in the sense that the whole religion and faith can be reduced and dismissed as one body that can be targeted for violence and then dismissed as a nothing. What is helpful for us is to look at or map the violence, the pattern of violence that takes place against the Dalits, the Christians, and the tribals. When we look at the commonalities and identify the patterns of violence, I see body as the site of violence. Number one. Two, impunity of the perpetrators of violence, meaning those who you may look at or imagine as those protectors of the Constitution and those whom you can seek or a refuge from, turn around to be either silent or tacit supporters of violence. And very often the state becomes a supporter or a silent, just a silent spectator. And this is something common that we identify as the experience of those who are targeted for violence in any time, any place, but very specifically looking at the Kandhamal situation that happened in August 2008. in February 2002, this rehearsal of the laboratory of Hindutva manufacturing hate was already tried on the bodies of the Muslims. And it was easy to try it out again against the bodies of the Christians in Kandhamar. So it is important to make the connection and link up these patterns of violence that are perpetrated by the Hindutva ideology. Why I stress on Hindutva is to differentiate Hindutva ideology from Hinduism. For example, when Sister Meena and Father Chelan were actually given refuge in a Hindu home by that Hindu person who wanted to protect these two from the mob, she later on says that she would have done it knowing, even though she knew the cost of, taking such a stand. So what was absolutely normal and natural was a good, harmonious relationship between Hindus, Muslims, and Christians, the tribals. But what is invented as the negative other, the dangerous other, the polluting, the threat other is part of the Hindutva ideology. And that is why for us to see the link between Hindutva and patriarchy. Hindutva is not a religion. It is another phase of patriarchy. And for us to see this commonality, the common pattern, is very important. What about those who are not physically present at the site of the violence? Very often, there is an imagined helplessness because there is that silence, that engineered silence, that colluding silence that is generated by the powerful, and in this case, by the Hindutva ideology, and acceptance, consent to that idea that Christians are out to get us. Christians are out to increase their number and convert anyone, especially the women, the Dalits, the tribals. And therefore, as a way of protecting Hinduism, protecting their own majority religion, and under the label of conversion, Christians, their religious sites and symbols were targeted in Kandhamar. For us to see how the site of violence that happened on August 23rd, 2008, when it is narrated by people, for us to realize that even the crucifix kept in the sanctuary was not spared. The cross at the top of the church, not spared. That cross was brought down, and in that place, a flag, and the saffron flag being hoisted. It's just to once again enumerate that power and control can never be yours. I was reminded very much of Exodus chapter 1. I'm speaking from the Bible here, where there is this production of theories, myths, to say, imagine what would happen if these people and then turn around and hurt us. So we have to protect ourselves and therefore create a logic to initiate persecution, initiate violence is a very common pattern. And once we read this as a common sign, as a familiar sign, it is important for us to look for reasons. Why is it that a female body, a Dalit body, a tribal body is identified as a threat? And this is where, once again, we see the commonality of experiences between the African American struggle for identity, struggle for justice, the voices for equality and equity that scream for justice and scream for democracy. The basic point is this: democracy and diversity are a threat to patriarchy. And if we have to look at the violence that is perpetrated against these bodies, especially the Christian Dalit bodies, rather than taking that as the way to bear in silence, analyze, and understand the situation, we turn that into a point of coming together and realize that these boundaries are intentionally drawn between us, between religions, between women and men, to say that we may be enemies, to create that mistrust against one another. So for us to come together as bodies, as everybody, and be against patriarchy and Hindutva that targets our bodies, and keep that as a sign of embodied justice as our vision and hope. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Reverend Evangeline, for those beautiful remarks. We really, really appreciate you being here. Last but not least, we have our panelist, Sydney Cochen from the Jubilee Campaign. She is the Government Relations and Special Projects Coordinator at Jubilee Campaign, which is an organization focusing on international religious freedom and human rights. In her capacity, Sydney submits written contributions to numerous United Nations mechanisms on those topics on behalf of her organization. And in the context of India, much of her work focuses on promoting the abolition of state anti-conversion laws. So Sydney, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Awesome. Thank you for the very kind introduction. It's a great honor to be on a panel with these wonderful women speakers and rights activists. I'd like to start off by wishing everyone a very happy belated International Women's Day to all my fellow panelists and attendees. Today I will be discussing the challenges that Christian women specifically face in India as double minorities according to both their faith and their gender. First off, I'd like to explain that, as has already been covered by my fellow panelists, violence and discrimination against Indian Christian women and India faith minority women does not occur in a vacuum, but is part of two broader trends. First, the pattern of violence and discrimination against Christians in general and any individual or group that does not subscribe to the majority Hindu faith, and the pattern of subjugation of women in a society that devalues them. In its yearly report in 2021, the Evangelical Fellowship of India's Religious Liberty Commission reported 505 instances of hate against the Christian community, including threats and harassment, physical violence, false accusations of blasphemy or conversion, desecration of houses of worship, arbitrary arrests, hate speech, and more. 16 of these incidents occurred on Christmas Day alone. With regards to Indian Christian women specifically, violence against them has increased remarkably over the past couple of years. In July 2020 in Jharkhand's Kunti district, the body of 25-year-old Christian woman Suman Munda was found outside of her home. It is believed her murder was motivated by her faith. In August 2020 in Faridabad, 4 Christian women went to the police to report that earlier in the day, a group of Hindu extremists had verbally abused them just outside of their home. The police had informed them that they would be safe and that they would be increasing security outside of the women's homes. But the following day, the same group of Hindu extremists returned and dragged the 4 Christian women outside of their home and beat them on the streets while others watched. One woman, 43-year-old Sushma, had been left unconscious and in the hospital for a week after the incident. Reports by Persecution Watch and Open Doors also reveal that persecution of Indian Christian women have increasingly been sexually violent in nature. In November 2020, 20-year-old Christian woman Jyoti William was found deceased in her apartment in Punjab with injuries indicative of violent sexual assault and a vicious struggle. In Open Doors' India Country Dossier, covering the period of October 2020 to September 2021, at least 38 Christian women were subjected to rape, attempted rape, and other forms of sexual violence. In other incidents, Christian women have been targeted by state anti-conversion laws, as Reverend Dr. Evangeline noted just before me. These laws, while they attempt to crack down on allegedly fraudulent religious conversions, have been misused to falsely accuse faith minorities of coercive religious conversion. In February 2021, a group of Hindu extremists ambushed a Christian prayer meeting and began assaulting participants, including 2 women, Sonari and Suroma. Afterwards, the perpetrators dragged the 2 women to a local police station and baselessly accused them of conducting forceful religious conversions. Fortunately, interrogations revealed that the lack of evidence behind the allegations meant that Sonari and Suroma were absolutely not guilty of any crime, and they were released from custody. However, the accusations against them had lasting detrimental implications on their lives, as they were disowned by their family, kicked out of their family home for allegedly disgracing the family by refusing to renounce their faith. In March 2021, a group of 4 nuns from the Sacred Heart Society were on a train returning to Delhi when a group of Hindu extremists entered the train at one of its stops and began to accuse the nuns of religious conversion. Rather than exercising due diligence and investigating the allegations, authorities swiftly arrested the nuns and held them for hours for a lengthy interrogation. It was only once the national rights advocacy groups across India heard of the incident and began campaigning for the nuns' release that they were actually set free. A dangerous combination of factors makes it both very easy for crimes to be committed against Indian faith minority women and Christian women with impunity, and also very difficult for survivors of these crimes to seek justice. In a culture where misogyny and patriarchy persists and victim blaming is commonplace, women survivors of sexual violence on account of their gender and faith are discouraged from seeking accountability, and even when they do, it is likely to be met with unfavorable results. In 2021, Indian editor Tarun Tejpal was acquitted of sexually assaulting his junior colleague in an elevator 7 years earlier. The court judgment found that Tejpal had simply made a shameful lapse of judgment and suggested that the woman was at fault for wearing a short dress and being allegedly promiscuous. In a similar way, faith minorities are often blamed for transgressions upon them on account that they are following a faith that does not align with the Hindu majority. In fact, in numerous instances, notable leaders have called for violence against these faith minorities. For example, in August 2021, Hindu nationalists held an anti-Christian demonstration in Chhattisgarh's Bastar district, during which they shouted slogans, "Let us drag people from the church and beat them with shoes." Secondly, I would like to highlight one major factor of anti-conversion laws in Indian states that my colleagues at ADF International that I work closely with have discussed before. And though this doesn't apply exclusively to incidents involving women, it is relevant in that it affects Christian minorities and faith minorities, and thus is a factor to consider, especially when considering cases such as Sonari and Suroma's. These anti-conversion legislations cast the burden of proof on the accused to prove that they are innocent rather than on the prosecution to prove that they are guilty. In the majority of cases of accusations of fraudulent conversion mentioned in the Evangelical Fellowship of India's report, authorities are quick to arrest Christians without warrant on mere accusations and file charges against them when absolutely no proof or otherwise dubious evidence is provided. All of these acts of violence and discrimination against Indian Christian women and Indian faith minority women are unfortunately not surprising to us when we consider that both women and faith minorities are viewed as second-class groups in society. Therefore, changes must be made not only at the legal level to protect women, faith minorities, and those who dually fall under both of these categories, but also at the society level. And I'd like to close my remarks by referring to something that Miss Akriti said earlier, that feminism is the strongest and most viable opponent to Hindutva. I'm a strong believer in faith and strength in numbers, and women make up nearly half of Indian society. I think now is the time, as all of the other panelists have stated, to join together women from all corners of Indian society, Dalits, Christian, Hindu, Muslim, to combat Hindutva, which subjugates them. And so I hope that's a hopeful note to close my remarks on. And thank you once again for inviting me to speak.
Thank you so much, Sydney. Really appreciate your time and those really thoughtful remarks. And same to all of our panelists. We really appreciate you being here. And lastly, just to get some of your closing thoughts, we will be having like a sort of brief Q&A session, not too long though, because kind of running towards the end of our time here. There is one question here that I want to address is like, what do you think the way forward is? I know we spend a lot of time talking about the tragedies of the unity that's being destroyed by Hindutva, but are there any examples of unity that you've seen, like both that you've seen personally or that you've heard about or experienced? If you could share those as examples of what we together can be doing to move forward, that would be awesome. I open it up to any of you who want to answer. Okay, Akriti.
Yes, I think this unity which is being attacked and dismantled, it's exactly the same unity that's going to really be a threat. So, of course, the sisters of the world unite, but there's one very important example from India, which is the anti-CA NRC protests and where Muslim women who were seen as the most timid, as the most withdrawn into the households, as the most domesticated, were the ones who were actually at the forefront of the protests, and which really shook the government in a very big way. And I think, and it was such a beautiful protest, and it was such a sustained one, with so many symbols, so many slogans, so many narratives that came across. Even during the farmers' protest, there were in Hindi we call them dadis, grandmas. There was like again images of the grandmas who were coming, and Kangna Ranaut, who's again herself a woman but often takes very anti-women stances and like close to establishment stances. She accused many of these women as paid protesters, and it got to the nerves of many of these dadis who actually openly came against and it was like such a beautiful sight. And similar imageries of grandmas from Shaheen Bagh protest, I think those were the moments that really on the face had challenged this kind of a Brahminical patriarchal system and this regime in a very big way. And I think we find our answers exactly there. And also there are so many day-to-day practices such as intercaste marriage. I'd mentioned Ambedkar, such as interfaith marriages. And of course, the great work that you all are doing is in itself so important. So congratulations on it. And I think it was very fascinating to be a part. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Is anyone else, if you'd like to answer that question, please feel free. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Reverend Evangeline?
I just want to say that, once again, going back to identifying that common principle that is used to denounce our bodies together, and dismiss it as polluting, powerless, devalued bodies. I think it is so very important for us to start with that principle of absolute affirmation of equity and human dignity. I would, within the Christian framework, I would put it as the image of God principle. The divine in the other has to be affirmed and accepted by everyone. And for us not to mistake, just those voices that cry for rights of the womb, as pro-life, pro-choice, etc., and not continue the struggle with and for life in abundance for all throughout, it's very difficult. So for us to see through those structures, those policies that some that are bent on kind of dividing women and women, religion and religion, and based on our policies and things like that, for us to come together in that affirmation of the body, every body, regardless, and say that we are the bearers of the image of God. And that is the absolute core equalizing and factor in all of us.
Beautiful response. Thank you so much. I don't mean to close this off early because I know I would love to absolutely hear more from all of you. Could probably go on for hours here. But as we are running a little short on time, I'll sort of direct our viewers to the screen again, because we do want to play one last video for all of you before we wrap up. This is a video made by our friends at Hindus for Human Rights on the topic of women's rights in India and the ongoing struggle for equality. So if we could play that, please.
वुमेन्स डे महिलाओं के अधिकारों के लिए आंदोलन का प्रतीक। यह दिन महिलाओं के अधिकारों को बढ़ावा देने के लिए मनाया तो जाता आ रहा है, लेकिन हकीकत यह है कि आज भी महिलाओं के अधिकारों को रौंदा जा रहा है। उनकी कामयाबी के नाम पर बेटी बचाओ बेटी पढ़ाओ जैसी योजनाएं चलाई तो जाती हैं, लेकिन क्या सच में हम चाहते हैं कि देश की महिलाएं आगे बढ़ें और उपलब्धियां हासिल करें? देश में एक तरफ जहां हम कुछ महिलाओं की कामयाबियों का डंका पीटते हैं, वहीं दूसरी तरफ कुछ महिलाएं ऐसी भी हैं जिनके आगे बढ़ने के अधिकार को, सम्मान को, यहाँ तक कि उनके जीने के अधिकार को भी छीन लिया गया। उन्नाव यूपी का एक जिला जिसे आप किसी महिला की तरक्की से नहीं बल्कि उन्नाव में एक नाबालिग के हुए रेप की वजह से जानते हैं, जिसके जिम्मेदार सत्ता में मौजूद सरकार के विधायक थे। यह किसी की बेटी थी और उसे भी समाज में बढ़ने का अधिकार था, पर उसके सम्मान को छीनने के बाद उसकी हिम्मत को तोड़ने की कोशिश लगातार की गई। इसी तरह का एक चर्चित मामला हैदराबाद का है, जहां एक महिला डॉक्टर जिसने अपने नाम के आगे डॉक्टर लगाने के लिए दिन रात मेहनत की होगी, पुरुषों से कंधा मिलाकर चलने, देश के लोगों की सेवा करने के सपने देखे होंगे। अपने अधिकारों की लड़ाई लड़कर वो इस काबिल बनी, लेकिन उसके लड़के होने के कसूर में सब खराब कर दिया। वह कुछ मर्दों की हैवानियत का शिकार हो गई और उसके अस्तित्व, उसकी वो पहचान जिसे हासिल करने के लिए उसने ना जाने कितनी मेहनत की होगी, उसे आग लगा दी गई। हाथरस कांड, जिसमें एक दलित युवती के साथ दरिंदगी की गई थी, वो भी एक महिला थी और अपने अधिकार और समाज में बराबरी का ओहदा पाने के लिए बचपन से ही संघर्ष कर रही थी। पैदा होते ही दलित होने पर संघर्ष किया, बलात्कार के बाद पुलिस में रिपोर्ट लिखवाने के लिए संघर्ष किया, लेकिन मौत के बाद तक उसका संघर्ष खत्म नहीं हुआ। ये चंद मामले ही हैं, इसी तरह के बहुत मामले हम रोज अखबारों में पढ़ते हैं और सुनते हैं। हर दिन बढ़ते रेप के मामले भी महिलाओं को आगे बढ़ने से रोकने, उसके पढ़ने, घर से बेफिक्र होकर बाहर निकलने के अधिकारों पर एक ग्रहण है। हम लैंगिक समानता की बात करते हैं, लेकिन यह समानता आएगी कैसे? यह एक बड़ा सवाल है, क्योंकि आज भी महिला सुरक्षित नहीं है। आज हर फील्ड में महिलाओं ने नाम कमाया है, लेकिन हम यह भी नजरअंदाज नहीं कर सकते कि काम करने वाली महिला से लेकर स्कूल में पढ़ने वाली बच्ची तक यौन उत्पीड़न का शिकार होती है। वक्त के साथ महिलाएं समाज और राष्ट्र के निर्माण का एक अहम हिस्सा बन चुकी हैं, लेकिन ये भी सच है कि आज भी महिलाओं पर हक जमाने वाले लोग, उनके हर छोटे बड़े फैसलों को गलत ठहराने वाले लोग, उन्हें डिमोटिवेट करने वाले लोग, उन्हें इज्जत के नाम पर आगे ना बढ़ने देने वाले लोग और हमारे आसपास ही मौजूद हैं। इसी तरह के कई मामलों में महिलाओं को आज भी समान सम्मान और अधिकार नहीं मिले हैं।
I want to thank the teams behind that video for putting it together. Amazing quality, amazing content. Thank you so much. And I do want to end off this congressional briefing with one final message, especially to people who are living in the West, that women in India cannot afford your silence. Now is the time to recognize that all Indian women are worthy of your activism, your energy, and your celebration. The recognition should not be limited to Women's Day alone. And I hope that this recognition that we're starting right now continues on throughout the year, no matter what the background of these women are, because at the end of the day, every single woman's struggle is the same struggle. And standing up for one woman is standing up for all of us. So we thank you for attending. Thank you to all our speakers for taking the time to join us, and also to Sister Linda, who recorded a message for us. And thank you to everyone for joining us today. Before we wrap up, I do have one last announcement, so just stick around for 5 seconds. Every month, IMC's Genocide Desk, led by lead researcher Noelle Jones, releases a monthly report on the state of minorities in India in light of the lack of condemnation and prosecution of the calls for mass violence against Christians and the genocide of Muslims at the Hindu religious parliament meetings held in Haridwar, Delhi, and Raipur in December 2021. So this report details the continuing escalation of hate speech, harassment, and violence committed by right-wing Hindu nationalists against Muslims and Christians over February 2022. If you'd like to check it out, this report, as well as last month's report, are both available for download on IMC's website. And like I said, we will be releasing these kinds of reports every month, so please do keep checking back for more information. Lastly, I'd like to thank all the co-organizers of this briefing, which include Amnesty International USA, Genocide Watch, 21 Wilberforce, Hindus for Human Rights, Indian American Muslim Council, Indian International Christian Concern, Jubilee Campaign, Dalit Solidarity Forum, the New York State Council of Churches, Federation of Indian American Christian Organizations of North America, India Civil Watch International, Students Against Hindutva Ideology, Center for Pluralism, American Muslim Institution, International Society for Peace and Justice, Association of Indian Muslims of America, and the Humanism Project. For further resources, please do check out any of these organizations' websites, and please feel free to contact us for any more information. Thank you all for your time, and have a great rest of your day or night, depending on